Coming to paperback and e-readers in 2021, John Haynes, Taking Care of Business. The man who rules the world breaks on a brand new partner to help him take care of business in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Taking Care of Business in 2021 at online booksellers everywhere. Just as soon as Bill Cosby was released from prison, the mainstream media began a narrative to demonize him. Now, your Bill Cosby was released because his conviction was overturned, but the mainstream media is trying to spin it like he's still guilty. And the way they're trying to spin it that he's still guilty is by saying that he got off on a technicality. Now, your Bill Cosby, as I see it, did not get off on any sort of technicality. No, the court went by the deal that was made with the previous district attorney. And the previous district attorney declined to go out here and file any criminal charges based on the affidavit that was written back a couple of years ago. And that's not a technicality. That is the agreement that the district attorney made with Mr. Cosby and his attorneys. That in no way, shape, or form is any sort of technicality, because once we look into the affidavit, it clearly states that Bill Cosby did not drug any women. Now, the mainstream media, in addition to trying to minimize the release of Bill Cosby based on the facts and the rule of law, are now also trying to continue demonizing him by trying to continuing to present him as some sort of black brute. And the mainstream media is now also continuing to talk about how Bill Cosby went out here and allegedly went out here and sexually assaulted over 60 women. And these cases have not been founded or proven in any court of law. And many of the details in many of these cases really don't make any sense once you start to take a critical examination of them. Because many of the alleged assaults took place during the late 1960s and 1970s, and during that time we were still in the dark days of Jim Crow. And if your Mr. Cosby were to have gone out here and participated in a sex crime, I guarantee you that these white victims would have easily been able to go to the police, and they would have easily gotten Mr. Cosby arrested back in the 1960s and 1970s during the dark days of Jim Crow. Because a white woman's word in this country was considered to be truth back then, and Mr. Cosby was not the so-called superstar he was back in the 80s and the 90s. So there was no way that your Mr. Cosby wouldn't have been arrested for participating in a sex crime back then. But these women want to go out here and make the allegation that Mr. Cosby participated in a sex crime, and that just isn't true at all once you take a critical look at these allegations in the context of history. Now, the many of these same types that want to continue talking about all of the victims also want to talk about how your Bill Cosby's conviction being overturned is going to go out here and make a major setback for sexual assault victims. And I don't believe it's going to make any sort of setback for actual victims of sexual assault and sexual violence, because women who have endured sexual assault and sexual violence, they are going to want to go out here and get justice. What's really going to get set back is this Me Too movement and all of the lies that were around it. Because when the Me Too movement came out, they came out full force because they wanted to go out here and get Bill Cosby. And this Me Too movement has lost a lot of credibility because the Me Too movement has been proven to be not about stopping sexual harassment and sexual assault of all women, but it's all a witch hunt to go after black men. Because the Bill Cosby sexual assault conviction being overturned should not stop anybody who wants to stop sexual harassment and sexual assault. And if you really were serious about this, you would be at the Danny Masterson rape trial, which is going on right now. I mean, where is the Me Too movement when it comes down to Danny Masterson? It's like a whole host of eerie silence for Danny Masterson's rape trial. However, many of these same women are out here in the streets upset about Bill Cosby. And that just shows you the start of the hypocrisy as related to the Me Too movement, as related to stopping sexual harassment, sexual assault, and sexual violence. Many of these women, they are upset over Bill Cosby's sexual assault conviction being overturned. However, they're silent about Danny Masterson. Moreover, they're silent about Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, and his numerous allegations of sexual harassment that have taken place. Why haven't we heard from many of those white women as related to Andrew Cuomo? And why hasn't Andrew Cuomo's face been plastered all over the media as the image of sexual predation, the way Bill Cosby's image has been presented all over the media? That's a critical question I want to ask many in the mainstream media. Why is it that these alleged white perpetrators, like your Andrew Cuomo's, your Danny Mastersons, and many others, why aren't their faces being presented as the face of sexual assault? And why aren't many of these women outraged over these men's allegations? But they are all in arms on social media and the mainstream media over Bill Cosby's conviction being overturned. Now, when you take a critical examination of the facts in the case as related to Bill Cosby, it is clear that the evidence didn't really add up. But many in the mainstream media continue to want to try to push the narrative that Bill Cosby is some sort of black brute, and they want to continue pushing the narrative that Bill Cosby went out here and participated in alleged sex crimes when the evidence clearly, shows that the details as related to the facts do not match the allegations that many of these women are claiming. And again, the timeline really doesn't add up in many of the cases, and some of the details in some of these cases have already been proven to be untrue. Like, for example, in the case of Janice Dickinson, that case was proven to be untrue, and many others was proven to be completely untrue. So you have a continuing and ongoing campaign to malign the image, name, and reputation of Bill Cosby. And what's troubling is that the mainstream media continues to try to spin a narrative as related to Bill Cosby that is completely untrue, and continues to try to push a narrative that your Bill Cosby is some sort of sexual predator, but the facts don't really add up and match the details. And that is the most troubling thing about this whole Bill Cosby, and as related to him getting his conviction overturned. This man, who was supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, was denied an opportunity at getting a fair trial, is still being tried in the court of public opinion. And the court of public opinion seems to be trying to push this narrative that he continues to be the image of sexual predation. And again, this looks to be very racial, because again, we don't see many of these same women, especially these white women, coming out in force against your Danny Masterson, who is on trial right now. Where are all of the Rose McGowans and many of the other women in the Me Too movement as related to your Danny Masterson? Where are Rose McGowan and many of the women of the Me Too movement in the face of Andrew Cuomo's allegations of sexual harassment? That's another critical question I want to ask. And if these women are so serious about stopping sexual harassment and sexual assault, then why has the Me Too movement practically disappeared in the cases of these white men? I mean, if you wanted to stop sexual predation, you think you would want to go out here and go after all of the sexual predators, but it seems like they only come out when it's in the case of black men, and that just shows me how racist the Me Too movement is, and it also shows me how racist the mainstream media is, because in the case of the white men, especially the white men who are a part of the leftist party, there's all of this silence as related to all of these cases, as related to allegations of sexual harassment, allegations of sexual assault. There's nothing but silence as related to these white leftists and many of these people, which shows me that the Me Too movement was basically a witch hunt to go after black men like Bill Cosby, because we didn't get any sort of start of anybody talking about any sort of sexual predation until Bill Cosby came along and your Hannibal Buress started the narrative. So I continue to see what's going on here as related to Bill Cosby. People are still trying to demonize Bill Cosby, still trying to tarnish his name and his legacy, and it clearly shows the racism that goes on in the mainstream media, because we don't really see people going out here pushing the same narratives, again, against your Danny Mastersons, your Andrew Cuomos, or even convicted predators like Roman Polanski, who all the way in another country is still making films. And we don't see anybody talking about Woody Allen, who has been dealing with these allegations for years, nor do we see people out here in force talking about Stephen Collins, a man who openly confessed to participating in pedophilia. No, that's why I can say that this whole campaign against Bill Cosby is clearly malicious and clearly racist, because we don't see any of these people out here talking about any of these other white celebrities, and we don't see them going out here with the same fervor that they did with Bill Cosby. Because again, where are all of those people who got upset on social media? I mean, Danny Masterson's trial has been going on for a good couple of weeks now, but nobody's talked about it, nobody's covered it, and everybody has been absolutely silent in the case of it. And again, this just shows you the racism and hypocrisy as related to Bill Cosby, and it also shows us how the mainstream media wants to try to turn Bill Cosby into a black brute so they can continue pushing their anti-black narrative and continue participating in anti-black racism. Now, this video will not be monetized, so if you could donate to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App, it would be greatly appreciated. And if you could also head over to Amazon.com and pick up one of my books in the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, the Thetas, or the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, or my men's issues books like The Man Crisis, that would also help keep this channel on the air. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.